The following is the second excerpt from my latest blog, Babe, Pig in the Apocalypse, a Cornish Pastiche, a zombie chronicle by David Roberts, copyright 2014, all rights reserved. This is a work of fiction. Chapter 3, A Shaggy Dog Tale. The relief the Quackers had survived his terrible ordeal was short-lived. The humans had heard all of Salma's cries for help and, of course, Goliath's not-so-subtle approach to rescuing their friend. Now the once dignified creatures, they walked on two legs, so they had to be, were crawling across the debris, their nacreous eyes fixed on Babe. "Why are they looking at me like that?" Babe cried, feeling their hate-filled stares boring into him. "I don't like it." Shep appeared to be struggling with some inner turmoil. Finally he spoke. "I've heard tell from my old Uncle Charlie that pigs supposedly taste a little like humans." The group looked at him with a mixture of shock and awe. "Dare I ask?" Goliath wondered aloud, his bass voice booming. "Actually, I have two questions," Babe piped up, his brain's three synapses connecting long enough to drive a thought process or two. "The first is how your uncle even knew that, and second, why would that mean they want to focus on me?" "Let's walk and talk," Shep said calmly, nudging the inquisitive pig forward. "I reckon we need to maintain a healthy distance from that lot, if it's all right with the rest of you." Goliath shook the last of the plaster dust from his shaggy winter coat as he followed them away from the collapsed building, the motley group of strange humans tagging along behind them. "You changed the subject," Babe said, doggedly pushing Shep for an answer. Shep sighed, wishing he hadn't brought the topic up, even though any scintilla of knowledge he had might help them to survive. "All right then," he began. "I'll tell you what I know. My Uncle Charlie was a great sheepdog, but I'm sorry to tell you that if he was alive today, he would not have wanted me to be friends with a pig, that's for sure. It's not that he was piggist per se, it was more that he only trusted animals with fur, probably something to do with the cruel way his master had treated him." Babe was spellbound. He liked nothing better than a good yarn about the old days, and as a result Shep had to keep nudging him to make sure the little pig kept on walking. Thought and action in the same moment counted as multitasking, something at which Babe was less skilled at than most others. "Anyway, one day I hear a truck driving up to the farmhouse, and old Uncle Charlie's master gets out and walks over to our owner. I think the two of them were brothers. He starts shouting about how Uncle Charlie was mad and was running around the neighbouring farm, frothing at the mouth and attacking other animals. At the time I thought he said it was all the fault of the rabbits, but I was only a youngster and I hadn't even heard of the curse of hydrophobia. After a lot of swearing, the pair of them rushed off to hunt poor old Charlie down. Of course I was angry at my master for ever believing such rubbish. After all, how could a rabbit make a dog mad?" "It sounds like the start of a crappy joke to me," the bloody cat interjected in a snide voice. He'd caught up with them and was sticking his nose in, trying to find out what they were all doing. Perhaps the dog realized the rabbits were cleverer than him. That wouldn't be difficult, now would it? This time Goliath's foot was quicker than Quacker's, try saying that after a few beers, whose wings were still gummed up with the mess of human blood that had spilled onto him. The poor bird was grateful to be able to hitch a ride on the big horse's back while his doting partner did her best to clean him up. With an indignant screech, the cat withdrew to a safe distance and rubbed its side where the hoof had connected. "After you lot have quite finished pissing about, I'll continue. Now, where was I?" Shep said, thinking hard. "Ah, yes. So I ran off to find Uncle before the nasty humans could hurt him. It seemed like I ran for hours until finally catching up with the mad old fucker." Babe looked askance at Shep. "I'm not being rude. I mean it. It wasn't just that he was mad. He never actually admitted anything, but the sheep on his farm did seem to be the source of certain rumours. Not like those bastards can keep a secret anyway. They're always bleating on about something or other. But I digress. Anyway, when I caught up to him, he was wandering in circles, his muzzle covered in pink froth like he'd just drunk an extra-large beetroot cappuccino, muttering about his hatred of the word B-A-T-H. "But how does him not wanting a stupid wash relate to pigs and humans tasting the same?" Babe asked. Shep was stunned that Babe had managed to keep up with the story so far. "Is this going to be one of your shagging dog stories?" Shep sighed. Could this pig get nothing right? He decided to ignore him. The creature's stupidity was just too distracting. "He saw me standing there and smiled. At least I think he did. He did show a lot of teeth. He seemed to be nervous about something, not his usual self at all. I got the distinct impression all he wanted me to do was to leave him alone. After a while he composed himself. He seemed to have trouble lining up his thoughts in a coherent fashion. Slowly, as if he'd just learnt Doglish, he asked why I was there, and so I told him what our farmer had said to his master." At that, Charlie collapsed to the ground, looking strangely deflated, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. For some reason he began gnawing at one of his paws. "Shep," he said between mouthfuls, "you know I've never been one to complain, but I have to say I'm feeling a little out of sorts right now. I think I've done some things I'm not going to be proud of in the morning." "With the friendly sheep?" Babe asked helpfully. The little bugger had been listening more attentively than usual. In spite of still missing the point, Shep just smiled down at him. "No." Shep's face was serious now. Behind him were the carcasses of He hesitated, not wanting to hurt Babe's feelings any more than was necessary to make him understand. There were the corpses of 3 slaughtered pigs behind him. It would have been obvious to a blind man that my uncle had been feeding on them, and it certainly accounted for the pink froth. There, Shep thought, I've said it. The family secret was out at long last. He hung his head in shame. I've never met a pig, Babe mused. What are they like? I don't know. Apart from you, I've never met one either. And that's beside the point. Uncle Charlie also had occasion to bite a human, hence his first-hand knowledge of their similarity to pig flesh. I saw a program on telly a while back that said headhunters in New Guinea used to call the white man Long Pig for the same reason. You, Salma interjected, cutting through the seriousness of the moment. That's gross. It's true, Shep protested. What? Salma replied, a little confused at the turn the conversation was taking. She'd not heard a word of Shep's heartfelt revelations about skeletons rattling around in the sheepdog's family closet. Talking to Crackers, she continued, This blood on you is really disgusting and tastes ever so funny. It's like really gooey, and it looks a bit greenish. Shep sighed with relief at the distraction, but sadly not for long. He and Babe looked in horrified dismay at the ducks. Something weird was happening to the lovely Salma. Something very weird and very bad indeed. Chapter 4. Simone Pig. Crackers wailed in dismay as he watched his beloved partner slowly change before his very eyes. Salma appeared to be increasingly distressed. Her eyes were bloodshot, not that that was easy to see. Her little button eyes were always dark, and a tear rolled slowly down her beak. She began to quiver as if in the grip of some terrible ague, and her wings extended fully and then went stiff. Slowly she began rocking to and fro in agitation and appeared to be in peril of falling off Goliath's back. Crackers grabbed her with his sodden wings and held on tight. Even more upset, she didn't seem to realize he was even there. Gradually the rocking became more pronounced, and slowly a little blood dribbled from her nasal passages. Oh my, Babe exclaimed. Is she becoming like Mrs. Farmer? What, fat? Shep replied. At least now that old girl's almost armless. There was a disapproving silence from his friends. Too soon? Goliath shook his head disgustedly but said nothing. Salma was looking really terrible now, with a trail of bloody drool escaping from her beaky mouth. No! Crackers wailed again, his heart almost audibly breaking. With a final violent spasm, Salma hawked up an enormous, unholy bolus of bloody snot, which landed on the ground next to Shep, who only just managed to jump out of the way in time to avoid being splattered. What the? Shep began. Salma looked blearily up into Crackers' teary eyes and smiled weakly. Sorry about that. Most unladylike of me. I think there must be something yucky in the human blood I was cleaning off you. It didn't half make me feel like death warmed up. Crackers hugged her tightly in his relief at her recovery, causing her to squirm a little in discomfort. At least it's not nasal leeches, Crackers said after a moment spent looking her over. Remember that time? They were right little bastards to get rid of. Remember the one that made me look like I had Hitler's moustache? Crackers sniggered at the memory. There was a general moan of disgust from the friends, all apart from Shep, who was eyeing the small pile of vomit hungrily. Would anyone mind? He asked, not finishing the sentence. That's gross, Goliath exclaimed. Oh, yeah, Shep retorted. That's rich coming from an animal that eats grass that's been shat on. Bloody perissodactyls. They never understand the bloodlust of a digitigrade. Reader's Digest? Babe asked quietly. Nope, beer mat, Shep replied sotto voce. Mum's the word, Babe replied out of the corner of his mouth. Shep nudged him in appreciation, then scoffed the pile of slimy vomit quickly down, licking the dregs from his lips with a satisfied smack. A moment later he looked panic-stricken as his insides rejected the offering, and he, too, heaved violently and returned the bloody mess to the grass. Well, that's embarrassing, Shep admitted meekly. Which bit? Goliath asked, incredulous at the dog's behaviour. The part where you wolfed down Salma's vomit, or the strange fact that your stomach seems to have better taste than you? Wasn't to be, he muttered philosophically, yes wistfully, ignoring the perissodactyl's dry sarcasm. Told you the blood wasn't right, Salma crowed, having recovered from her technicolor yawn. Come on, guys, Goliath pleaded. Stop going at each other. We're all in this together. Except the cat, Crackers interjected. Except the cat, the big horse agreed sagely. We have to get moving. I think we'll be safe from these strange humans once we get over that hill, he announced, pointing his muzzle in the direction of their onward journey, although why he thought that he did not clarify. Horse logic, probably. Run away from threats and everything will be okay. After all, they were creatures that could be calmed merely by putting on blinkers. In spite of the false hope of safety, Babe drew a deep breath in awe of the moment. He was actually going to see where the sun set. Every night the sun disappeared beyond the brow of this particular hill, and he really wanted to see what it did back there. The only thing he was worried about was whether it would be as disappointing as finding out what actually lay at the end of a rainbow. Come on then, chaps, Shep called. The humans are catching us up. And off they marched, Babe full of excitement at the new adventure, the rest with a certain amount of doubt as to the future. Their feelings of concern mainly stemmed from the fact that the humans seemed about to take some significant time off from their feeding duties around the farm. Goliath was already missing his cob nuts with added yeast. At his age, grass just didn't cut the mustard as far as regularity was concerned. There's a great pond over there with some tasty weed in it, so we should all be okay, Salma informed them authoritatively, her rumbling stomach turning her thoughts to food as well. Shep just looked at Babe. These simple animals obviously had no idea about feeding themselves in the apocalypse. It would just have to show them the way. They followed the winding, dusty path up the hill, Crackers and Salma wing and wing on the horse's back, grateful that they'd escaped the hooded guy with a sickle for the second time in less than an hour. "I've never been up here before," Babe told Shep. "Me neither," Shep confessed. "The sheep meadows are in the opposite direction." They continued on their way up the hill, their trepidation increasing as they neared the top. "What is that disgusting smell?" Crackers asked, trying to wrinkle his nose, but failing dismally, instead ending up with a lopsided grin. Babe looked around, his little nose twitching as it drew in the odor. "It smells familiar," he said, a little hopeful smile appearing on his face. "That's familiar?" Shep asked, bewildered. He'd never experienced such a stench before, but he was still relatively young, so what did he know? They continued walking in spite of the increasing offensiveness of the smell. "Smells like you after you ate that leftover curry," Shep joked with Babe. "Remember?" In spite of the fact he was just having a friendly jibe at the pig, somehow it felt like his analogy was right on the button. "We're nearly there," Babe said with a level of excitement Shep had never before heard in his little friend, but that alone he felt a tad depressed. As they reached the top they stared as the field opened out in front of them. Trees surrounded the fenced-in enclosure, while off to the left was a series of mini Nissen huts, in front of which was an area of heavily trodden mud. Further away, the rest of the field was lush with grass. It looked a peaceful scene, but that wasn't what made Babe's heart leap. The field was full of pigs. "Oh my," he sighed with surprised pleasure. "Pigs, ugh," a feline voice announced just out of slapping reach. "I thought this one was the only trotter in the valley, but oh no, there goes the neighborhood." Babe turned around and confronted the cat. "I try to be a nice person, but you, Sid, are really pushing it with me." Sid shivered sarcastically. "Ooh, see me quiver with fright. I'm so scared of the big bad piggy wiggy." Babe sighed and looked at Shep for guidance. Shep shook his head imperceptibly, suggesting he leave it alone, ignore the spiteful little bastard he implored with his eyes. Looking back at Sid, Babe felt a certain amount of inner strength for the first time in his life. "You can be, well, the way you are," he said, speaking softly. It was strange to hear the underlying menace in the young pig's voice. Shep blamed all those Clint Eastwood films they'd watched at the farmer's house. "You probably can't help being a complete dick, but I don't have to take that sort of crap from you anymore. I've got family now. Here they are." "Family? Don't be a half-wit. Those things are not your family. They're just walking hog snacks. Your family became fodder for the farmer and his family a long time ago." Babe's face went bright red as anger surged through his body, flooding his plump little hide with adrenaline. Lunging as best he could with his stubby little legs at the spiteful creature, he caught it in its side, bowling it end over end. Letting out a yowl of anger, the cat landed on its feet and turned to face the aggressive little pig. Hissing threateningly, Sid wiggled his arse as he calculated the best angle to strike back, then leapt into the air with a speed and ferocity Babe had only seen it use on poor defenseless birds. In fright, Babe hastily sidestepped, and his attacker sailed harmlessly past him, an outstretched claw slightly grazing Babe's haunch. Shep launched himself into the fray in defense of his friend. "What the bloody hell do you think you're doing?" he barked angrily. "We have enough problems with the crazies without you squabbling." The cat's eyes were glowing with bloodlust as he crouched ready to attack again. "Don't get in the way, Nobbin," the cat hissed. "Isn't it enough that you two are an item without looking even more ridiculous once I've scratched off half your nose?" Over my dead body, Goliath whinnied and reared up, his forelegs sweeping the air with a rush of wind in his feathers and so adding to the drama of the situation. Selma and Quackers fell unceremoniously to the ground and scurried out of the way. The dog and pig would have been a piece of cake to tear apart, even fun, Sid thought. It was that bloody semi-brained horse and those clod-hopping hooves he had to watch out for. Sid wasn't one to push his luck, and seeing the lay of the land, he made a strategic withdrawal. Well, that's to say he ran bravely away. After all, one glancing blow from Goliath's hoof had been enough for him, and he was in no hurry to feel the pain again. The air around the friends was heavily charged with the pent-up violence of the moment. As they composed themselves, the small sounder of pigs that had been living so peacefully in this field prior to their arrival began to make their way over to the newcomers, curious as to what was going on. Babe watched their progress with anticipation. The smaller pig separated from the herd and walked, hip-swaying provocatively directly over to Babe. With a coquettish smile and a flutter of her lovely eyelashes, she spoke to him in a breathy tone. "Well, hello there, my dear," she began in a sexy yet sonorous voice, sounding like a cross between Eartha Kitt and Honor Blackman. Well, that's unexpected, Babe thought, but somehow very sexy. His chest went tight. "That was a very brave thing you did just now," the porcine goddess continued, "standing up to that horrid cat. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Simone Pig. What's yours?" Babe's heart began to beat hard and uncontrollably. I hope you've enjoyed these 2 chapters. If you would like to read them and more of my work, please feel free to visit my website at www.david-k-roberts.com or go to the Zombie Chronicles specifically at www.zombies-worldwide.com. These are some of the books I have written, all available on Amazon for Kindle.